Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 13, Text 35. Rupam tavaitam nanudushkradatmatam durdarshanam devayat adhyaratmakam chandamsi yasya tvachibarhiroma swajam drishitvam grishiv chaturhotram. It's so beautiful. I'm going to read it again. Rupam tavaitam nanudushkratatmanam durdarshanam devayad advaratmakam chandamsi yasya tvachibarhiroma ajam drishitvam grishu chaturhotram. Such a beautiful verse. Rupam, which is the form, tava, your, etat, this, nanu, but, dushkrita atmanam, of the souls who are simply miscreants, durdarshanam, very difficult to see, deva, O Lord, yat, that, adharatmakam, adharatmakam, worshipable by performances of sacrifice, chandansi, the Gayatri mantra and others, yasya, whose, tvachi, touch of the skin, barhi, sacred grass called kusha, romasu, the hairs on the body, ajam, clarified butter, drishti, in the eyes, too, also, angrishu, on the forelegs, chatuhotram, four kinds of fruitive activities. Translation: O Lord, your form is worshipable by performances of sacrifice. But souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it all, or unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others, are in the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass. In your eyes is the clarified butter. And in your four legs are the four kinds of fruitive activities. Translation, I'll just read it again quickly. O Lord, your form is worshipable by performances of sacrifice. But souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others, are in the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass, in your eyes is the clarified butter, and in your four legs are the four kinds of fruitive activities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There is a class of miscreants who are known in the words of Bhagavad Gita as Vedavadi, or so-called strict followers of the Vedas. They do not believe in the incarnation of the Lord, what to speak of the Lord's incarnation as the worshipable hog. They describe worship of the different forms or incarnations of the Lord as anthropomorphism. In the estimation of Srimad Bhagavatam, these men are miscreants. And in the Bhagavad Gita 7:15, they're called not only miscreants, but also fools and the lowest of mankind. And it is said that their knowledge has been plundered by illusion due to their atheistic temperament. For such condemned persons, the Lord's incarnation as a gigantic hog is invisible. These strict followers of the Vedas who despise the eternal forms of the Lord may know from Srimad Bhagavatam that such incarnations are personified forms of the Vedas. I'll read that again. These strict followers of the Vedas who despise the eternal forms of the Lord may know from the Srimad Bhagavatam that such incarnations are personified forms of the Vedas. Lord boar's skin, his eyes, and his bodily hair holes are all described here as different parts of the Vedas. He is therefore the personified form of the Vedic hymns and specifically the Gayatri mantra. This is coming from Srila Prabhupada himself here, saying he is therefore the personified form of the Vedic hymns and specifically the Gayatri mantra. I mean, so that we can actually end the class right here. You know, it's definitive. There's no question, there is no doubt. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Once again, we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 13, Text 35. I'm going to leave this up here so that everyone can see it. And thank you for joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning. The sun is shining outside, which is nice and pretty early for, we're still in February. It's supposed to be one of the coldest months. And it's supposed to be all white stuff. I can only see a little white stuff outside my window here, which I'm not complaining. But at the same time, it's early in the morning, it's the weekend, and, it's a lot of people are probably thinking, hey, I should be in bed and I should be cozy up under my blanket. But thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning. So here Maitreya Muni is attempting to answer Vidura's questions. So Vidura has these questions and questions and questions, and all good questions, valid questions, questions about Krishna. And he's been associated personally with Krishna, and yet he is so inquisitive. He wants to hear more and more and more and more and more. And Maitreya Muni is not losing his patience. He's not questioning Vidura's questions. He is also pretty excited. He's equally excited. He's equally absorbed in describing and discussing Krishna. So Krishna is the topic here of discussion for both of them. And, they are going on and on and on. It's such an engaging conversation. Now, in this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the title is The Appearance of Lord Varaha. Now, just earlier this month, His Holiness Romapad Swami was quoting from the Laghu Brihat Bhagavatamrita, where Varahadev was described or is described as an incarnation of the Supreme Lord that appeared not once but twice to save our Mother Earth. Now, while the pastime itself is very intriguing, today we will focus more on the essence of this particular verse. So let's start from where we left off from yesterday's class. Our dear Lakshmikant Prabhu asked the question, it's all the discussion was about Lord Varaha's being likened to the embodiment of the Vedas. Why Lord Varaha? Right? And Yamanajivan Prabhu answered brilliantly and to that question and said it's all coming from Krishna. So I'd like to build on that for this, for the next several minutes and see, if we have any discussion. But again, this verse is quoting the prayers and glorifications offered by the great sages, including Lord Brahma and others. And therefore, it's a fact, and it's not something that is whimsical, coming from such great authorities of all spiritual knowledge, from such great personalities who have been in the association of the Lord one way or the other, who have seen the Lord one way or the other, you know. So it's coming from them. And these are therefore not whimsical or poetic speculations, but rather facts. And they are declaring very boldly, right? Their glorification is saying you are the embodiment of the Vedas. So that's the very, very first premise. So we need to go in with an open mind for the rest of this discussion and see where we can go with this. And the things that we should be aware of, which we are, but bringing things in perspective. So I'm just going to attempt to put those things in perspective so that it makes it a little more easier for us to digest and accept these glorifications and these facts. So let's talk about the Vedas themselves. The Vedas were given to people at the beginning of creation, right? And the Vedas prescribed the performances of sacrifices. Now, what are these sacrifices for? The sacrifices were meant to glorify the Supreme Lord. Yeah. Why? Because the Supreme Lord is the Yajna Purusha, right? Even in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 5, the last verse, right? Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Tesh Yajna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam Gnatvam Shantam Richati. So Krishna is that Yajna Purusha. He is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices. And here, the Vedas are describing the different forms of sacrifices that one can perform as an offering to the Lord, right? And this offering is in the form of glorifications in this case. And in this verse also, specifically, the different kinds of sacrifices are described, right? Like the different parts of the Varaha form. For instance, his eyes are compared to clarified butter, ajyam. His bodily hairs to the kusha grass and so on, right? So these are all offerings. Now, the Vedavadis, as Srila Prabhupada describes them as so-called followers of the Vedas. Why? Because these individuals are pure speculators. Why? Because they're supposed to be extremely well read in the Vedas, but they simply fail to understand the goal of the Vedas. Vedascha sarver aham eva vedye. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Krishna declares that. Right? Krishna says that very, very, very clearly, explicitly. There's no doubt, no question about it. The goal of the Vedas is for us to get to know Krishna. That is the goal. And how do we get to know Krishna? It's not just academically or scholastically, but we are offering prayers, we're offering glorifications, we're making those sacrifices to please Krishna. And when Krishna is pleased, he reveals himself. That's the simple principle, right? Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, as Prabhupada also describes in this purport, these kinds of Vedavadis are classified as one of the worst of mankind, right? So in 7:15 specifically of the Bhagavad Gita, there is mention of the four types of people who are the worst of mankind, right? The Mudas, the Naradmas, the Mayaya Paharta Jnanis, and the Asharam Bhavitas, right? So these are the four kinds of living entities, who are completely inimical to the Lord. And the gradations progress, or I should say, uh, go down to a point where they're completely atheistic in principle, in mindset. Now, the class of Mayaya Paharta Jnanis, right, are the ones who are very erudite. They're extremely known. They're like the scientists, they're the philosophers, very extremely well read. but they're misguided by the illusory energy. In fact, Prabhupada even mentions that they are like the bejeweled serpents that can distract and hypnotize their prey by their, their wave, their artistic movements. And in this case, these people, they're so good and so well versed in the Vedas and the scriptures that they can use the jugglery of words to entice people. Their oratory skills are so good that they can attract people. It is very attractive. People are completely floored. For the common man, the hearing these things described so beautifully, and Vedas are flowery. I mean, it is a known fact, right? Our acharyas also tell us, stay away, be aware that the Vedas are very flowery. Don't get caught up in the flowery words of the Vedas, but instead go for the essence of the Vedas. Now, these people, these Vedavadis, are expert when it comes to the jugglery of words. They can quote left to right and right to left from the scriptures, and it leaves most of us completely in awe. Interestingly, my professor at Purdue, he would send me off to the library to dig up as much information as possible into what others have researched. Now, this was during my early days of attempting to do, to get a PhD. And I'd often wonder, what is the purpose in putting so many hours every day trying to find out what was already done, right? And then he told me one day that if I were to earn the doctorate of philosophy, I had to disprove all the previous work of the others with my original idea. Okay. Now, looking back and knowing what I know now, I should have known then. I understand that, these so-called original ideas that are coming from my mind is nothing but my own speculation, right? It's my own theory. And that applies to much of what these scientists come up with, what these astronomers, these astrologers, and all of these guys who are doing quantum physics, they keep coming up with theories, and then it goes back. Someone else comes up with a new idea and disproves the other one, and so it goes on and on and on and on and on. So what is good today is not valid tomorrow, and so on. So people are constantly trying to claim authority and claim fame for themselves. I mean, I don't mean to demean, folks who've got the PhD. It's a lot of work. I understand a lot of dedication. But at the same time, when you look at it from a perspective that we are as devotees, as practitioners of Krishna consciousness, we see the futile nature of all of that. Because it's already there. It's being given to us. It's being handed down to us through our sampradaya, all the way from Dharma down. So where is the question for us to try and figure things out on our own? And why even do that? Because it only turns out to be speculation. So yes, academically, yes, to make a living, yes, it makes sense for us to go to school, go to the university, get our degrees and so on. But at the end of the day, none of these people, these are the mental speculators, the Vedavadis that we're talking about, they are unable to even give simple answers. They argue that the Supreme Lord can never, never come into this material world. It would be demeaning for something of such high stature to come into this material world. And they're not able to give reasons to support that as to why. When you say that the Lord is present everywhere, when you say that the Lord is present even in an atom, they're not able to. They're like, oh, how can you be demeaning the Lord to and restricting the Lord to come into an atom? Right? These are the kinds of individuals who are not able to see the Lord, even if the Lord is in front of them, because they're so inimical. like the Hiranyakashipus, the Hiranyakshas, the Ravanas, the Kamsas. The Lord is right there in front of them. I mean, they're so fortunate to at least to see the Lord, to have that direct association here. How many of us are there in that situation? Close to zero, right? So these people are there in the association of the Lord. They're able to see the Lord. They're able to engage with the Lord. Yet they're not able to see with eyes of love. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, right? So, because of their selfish desires and envious nature, they're not able to see that. They're constantly seething with anger. They want to kill the Lord. They want to fight the Lord. They want to assert their dominance over the entire creation and so on. And that is because they do not want to surrender unto the Lord. And again, surrender in their eyes is like defeat, right? And defeat means taking a subordinate position. So instead, surrender here means the ability to open our hearts completely to the Supreme, right? So that's how we see surrender. That's how we're taught surrender to the Lord is opening of our hearts. Only then the transformation can take place, right? If we're closed, there's no way we're going to let others or anything else enter our hearts other than what we're already holding in our hearts, and which is usually full of junk, right? In most cases, and I can speak for myself. Now, Kriti means one who has performed meritorious work. But these so-called scientists and philosophers and leaders, I mean, they're using their intelligence. They are so intelligent, right? And they endeavor constantly, relentlessly. They're even baffled when things don't work, but they don't give up. They're constantly working and working and working to find a solution to whatever problem that they're working on, right? But this is all going towards, glorifying either themselves or, trying to further something that's already known. So their efforts for liberation are also equally futile, right? Because they're so focused on themselves and their own posterity that they're missing the whole point. And as Srila Prabhupada explains, he says, because the atheist brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, this atheistic planner is called a dushkriti, okay, which indicates that his intelligence is completely misdirected. Now let's talk about anthropomorphism, as Prabhupada mentions in his purport. Right now, anthropomorphism, talking about associating. What is anthropomorphism? It's about associating non-human things or events with human-like characteristics. Okay, and that is so characteristic, ironically, of the Vedavadis. Like I was telling you earlier, they just cannot see the Lord in his personal form. They think it's too restricting. They think, we're demeaning the Lord by bringing him into the human form. How can the Lord, who's omnipresent, who is omnipotent, how can he have only two hands? How can you say that he is existent in an atom, right? So they're completely deluded to a point that they turn it around instead and say, "Hey, what you're saying is complete speculation. You are thinking it all up." That's how these people are, and they will have 10 different arguments to come up with, why it should be this way and why it should be that way. And the Lord, and the supreme, the divine is energy, cannot have a personal form, blah blah blah, right? So such persons whose very principle of life is to denounce the personality of Godhead, there's no way they can surrender. There's no way they can surrender onto, the feet of Lord Krishna. Now, on the flip side, when we open our hearts to the Supreme Lord, we're able to have loving exchanges with the Lord. After all, now what did Kulavecha Sridhar or Haridas Thakur, they didn't have any material opulences, right? They didn't have anything that they could call their own. No house, no car, no family, no laptops, no TVs, no MTV, right? So what was their need to surrender? They were completely surrendered. But what was their need to surrender? Yet they were fully surrendered, not just surrendered, but fully surrendered. And because they were fully surrendered, the Lord was pleased and had such wonderful, loving exchanges with these personalities. Lord Chaitanya would regularly visit Kulavecha Sridhar's small shop, if you can call it that, storefront sitting on the street, basically with probably almost nothing but just a bunch of leaf cups, cups made of, leaves that he would stitch together and make in the form of cups so that people could use those cups in their offering, in their puja, and so on a daily basis. And it would just be a few pennies. I mean, a fraction of a penny if you look at it from that perspective, even at that time. And even that, Lord Chaitanya would say, no, you're charging too much. No, 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 you're charging too much, Sridhar. I want this at half the price. And he would do this, bug Sridhar, Kulavecha Sridhar, to a point, and Sridhar would say, oh my Lord, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? You know that, even first of all, they're not expensive. First of all, I'm charging very, very little. And whatever little I get, more than half of that, I use that to buy a few flowers so that I can offer it in my puja, in my offerings to Mother Ganges. And the remaining I use for my sustenance. I mean, that is barely enough for not even a meal, not even a meal. And yet, oh my Lord, you come here and trouble me every day telling me that I'm charging too much. Here, take it, take it. How much ever you want, take. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is having these, he doesn't need any of this. Obviously, he's doing this so that he can engage with this lovely, human being who is offering everything and more, out of love. Now, in this pastime, the great sages and the demigods, including Lord Brahma, they see this unprecedented form of Varaha, and they recognize the Supreme Personality, as the personification of the Vedas. And the Lord reciprocates by killing Hiranyaksha in this case, and then rescuing Mother Bhumi, right? And then reaffirming his presence with, the bluish presence that he exhibits. So anyway, here are some important takeaways from this verse. Okay, first of all, we need to know and continue to reinforce in our minds. The Srimad Bhagavatam has been telling us, so does the Bhagavad Gita as well, that this material world is temporary and it's constantly changing. It's constantly changing. What we are today, we were not yesterday, and we are not going to be tomorrow. We're constantly changing. Everything around us is changing. We were babies not so long ago, but we're not today, right? And tomorrow we're not going to be as young. So things are constantly changing. Everything around us is also constantly changing, right? And even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Mam upeti punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gati." So this world is temporary and it's full of miseries. So why even get attached to something that is so temporary and full of miseries? It's not that it is beautiful. It's like, our acharyas also tell us, if it's like a toilet. You want to go in there, finish your work, and get out of there as quickly as possible. Don't get attached. Don't go in there and sit in there and think it's the best thing in the world. No, this world in itself is not the best thing for any of us. It is a place that is full of misery, that is completely temporary, because whatever we do today is not going to be there tomorrow. We can run after things, we can accomplish things, yes, materially. They will not exist tomorrow. We come with nothing, we acquire a few things, and at the end of the lives, it's all gone. We're back to zero. Slate is clean, and we start all over again. So let's not get into that mindset. In fact, Prahlad Maharaj also, in his exchanges with his friends, his demonic friends, he says, "Mano rathena sato dhavato bai." So he says the ratha, ratha here is the chariot of the mind, manorath ratha. He says, don't ride this chariot of the mind. Why? Because the chariot of the mind is always running and engaging and pulling us into all of these materialistic pursuits. We've seen that, and that's the reason why we're here. Even after millions and millions and millions of lifetimes, we're still here. That's because this mind of ours has been pulling us back and keeps us engaged, saying, hey, this is the most important thing. This is the most attractive thing. Do it and you will feel better. Do it and you will get this. It's constantly putting us in that mode. And as long as we are in that mode, we are engaged in this materialistic way of life. And as long as we're in this materialistic way of life, we are going to get nothing but karmic reactions. We're just bound. So there's no way that we can get out of this cycle. So one has to transcend this material platform and come to the spiritual platform. Now, in connection with the temporary nature of the material world, Prahlad Maharaj also says, Maya Sukhaya Bharam Udbhato Vimudhan. Maya Sukhaya Bharam Udbhato Vimudham. So he says, for illusory happiness, people are constantly engaging in this futile pursuit, right? So they're going on and on and on, like these scientists and these philosophers and all of these guys who are constantly engaging in these material pursuits for a little happiness or for a little fame or for whatever it is, right? Which is all temporary in this material world. So we're all working like donkeys, so to speak, for something that will always be a zero at the end of our lifetime. That donkey is carrying loads and loads and loads of clothes through the entire town, following the dhobi. What for? What? Because the dhobi, the master of that donkey, is saying, "Okay, I will give you some, grass." And at the end of the day, he gets just some dry grass. And for that, this donkey is working so hard, carrying all these loads, getting kicked, getting beaten by the master, dhobi. When the irony is that there is grass all around that the donkey is not looking at. Instead, it is thinking, oh, I'm going to get some grass, my master is going to give me some grass at the end of the day. That's the mindset that we are in. We are constantly deluded by Maya. In fact, even Krishna says, right, Daivi Isha Gunumayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. He says this divine energy of mind, which includes the three modes of material nature, are very difficult to overcome. But then he also tells us how to overcome it. He says, Mam evaye prapadhyante, mayam etam tarantite. He says, just surrender unto me. Just surrender unto me. And by that, you will very easily overcome, Maya, which is also his external energy. So we need to transcend the material platform. And how do we do that? As Krishna said, surrender unto me. Because otherwise, it becomes it becomes an impossible task. Second, it just becomes an impossible task. It's if you don't follow the scriptures and if you don't follow the teachings that are given to us by our sampradaya and by our parampara, by our acharyas, by our spiritual master, we're constantly caught up in this cycle. It's almost an impossible task because the way you look at it, like look at the theory of relativity, right? That Einstein proposed. E is equal to mc squared. Now, you could potentially, theoretically, do time travel, provided that you can reach or attain the speed of light. And not just attain the speed of light, but the square of the speed of light. Can we even attain the speed of light to begin with? We still don't have the technology to be able to do that, leave alone the square of the speed of light. So we cannot travel faster than light. That's not even possible, right? Unless there is some supernatural way of doing this. So if you liken that to where we are, if we're caught up in our materialistic ways, it becomes impossible because no matter what you do, you're constantly invoking karmic reactions, and that binds us to this material realm. So Krishna is giving us a very simple answer here, and a simple way to do this, which is, through surrender. So we need to be honest. We need to, like I said, when we say surrender, it means opening our hearts. We have to open our hearts and receive Krishna. We need to receive Krishna in a way that we are humble. We understand that whatever we have is coming from Krishna. Whatever we have belongs to Krishna. And whatever we have is given to us by Krishna. So nothing is really ours. So we need to develop a sense of detachment from these material possessions, these worldly attachments. And when we achieve that, then we are akinchana. In other words, completely detached from material engagements. In fact, akinchana is one of the 26 transcendental qualities of a devotee, right? And when one achieves akinchana, when one is completely detached, like Kulavecha Sridhar, for instance, then one can achieve true happiness. Happiness that comes from letting go of all of these materialistic desires that bind us. So let's stop this manorathena, which is really riding that chariot of the mind. We need to tell our mind, stop it. You've got me. I've listened to you lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I need to do something differently. Otherwise, it's a definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So we need to overcome our ego, our pride, because that's what the mind's platform is. The mental platform is all about me. It's all about my happiness, my fame, how I'm being perceived in society and so on. So only then, when we can transcend that platform, can we get beyond the veil of Maya and actually see Krishna, right? Otherwise, we're so caught up in ourselves. So one has to go back to the bhakti principle that we have to surrender to a higher power and cultivate a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. Holding on to this bodily conception and that everything is mine, it's about me, will only prevent us from making progress and attracting the Lord, right? So the Lord does not need anything from us. Krishna doesn't need anything from us. He's completely self-satisfied. Leave alone our ego and our pride. I mean, Whatever little that we offer, even that if we're offering with some form of expectation of getting something back in return, is pointless. I mean, it's not at all attractive. But by opening our hearts to Krishna, giving Krishna with the love genuinely, without the slightest expectation of getting anything back, that is most attractive to Krishna. Now, how would the common person know? So that's the other takeaway, right? So the bhakti principle is one, but then how many people are aware of this, right? There's a very, very, very small percentage of people, even in this 7 billion that is living on this in the human form in this world. So how would the common man or woman know this knowledge? I mean, this is highly confidential knowledge. We are so fortunate. And no, these are not taught even in the Ivy League schools, not in the B schools. You're not going to find this in those places. I'm not being facetious here, but that's the truth. There we are taught about the pursuit of material happiness, so-called happiness, which is so fleeting as we know it. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So this particular verse is clearly telling us that true wisdom lies in understanding the spiritual truths that go beyond this material realm, this intellectual knowledge. Offering prayers to Krishna as he's leaving Mother Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, she says, Alakshyam sarva bhutanam antar bahir avishtitam. So that's Krishna, you reside both inside and outside of everything. Yet the unintelligent, they are the conditioned souls, they cannot see you. So Kunti Devi, she's there, she's engaging with Krishna. I mean, it's coming from her. I mean, she's such an exalted personality. So there should be no question in our minds to recognize, realize, and receive what she's saying with all honesty that we are conditioned souls. And as long as we remain in this conditioned form, we're not going to be able to see Krishna. We need to get out of this, right? We are very unintelligent in that sense, no matter how many degrees, advanced degrees that we have academically. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the eyes of spiritual knowledge. Jnana Chakshuha, right? So Jnana Chakshusha is the eyes of spiritual knowledge. And that's why every day we pray, we offer our obeisances to our Guru, our spiritual master. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah. Right? Because he is the one who removes all ignorance through the torch of spiritual knowledge. So, in conclusion, this verse cements the fact that Lord Varaha's appearance is not ordinary, and in fact, that he is the embodiment of the Vedas. Now, this verse also drives home the point that all of us need to transcend this material platform, and only then can we even start to perceive the Lord. Now, in that context, we also discussed, the importance of self-realization and spiritual knowledge. We discussed the transient nature of this material world, right? And these material pursuits. And therefore, we should all seek higher consciousness through bhakti or devotion. There's no question about it. That's the only way. And by carefully nurturing our bhakti, we can achieve perfection or pure devotion service, even in this life. So, with that, let me stop here and see if there is any discussion. Lakshmikant Prabhu, I'm not sure if this kind of addressed, the question that you had yesterday as to why Lord Varaha is being considered as the embodiment of the Vedas. He may not be in the class because he's also trying to attend the Bhakti-Vaibhava class. So I will get the response from him later. But others, Mataji, Sandhya Mataji, welcome back. Hare Krishna. And
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada.
please accept my Mataji.
Happy to hear from you. And after I'm being in a Bhagavatam class after some 6 weeks, I think. Imagine.
You went to the Holy Dham, so
Holy Dham, yes, I was. I was always seeing elephants and listening to the drums and the Vadyas, it was very nice.
Thank you, Mataji.
So very lovely to hear from you today.
Anything you would like to add? Correct?
No, actually, I have to read up and catch up on this chapter. I have to read up on my evening reading group also, so it will take me a while to focus.
Sure.
Thank you.
This was an eye opener because even for me, we know very little about Lord Varaha, as an incarnation, other than the fact that he rescued Mother Earth.
Yes.
The bowels of dirt and all.
Yeah. So the prayers. So these prayers are very, very illuminating about.
Very illuminating.
Yes.
Maharaj was also describing so beautifully from the Laghu Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is basically a sequel, as you know, written by Rupa Goswami to Sanatan Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita, right?
Yeah.
And in that, he describes how Lord Varaha appeared not once but twice. So so just amazing information.
That class I heard a little bit. Okay. Yeah. The Rakta Varaha and the Shweta Varaha, both in one day of Brahma. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Kanikabja Prabhu, anything from your side? Anything you'd like to add? You're on mute, Prabhu, if you're saying something. Okay.
Looks like he's attending to some other things also simultaneously.
Yes. Yeah. But thank you again. If there's nothing else, then we can close the class, and we can get back to the rest of the week and the things that we need to get done. But I wish you all a very Krishna conscious week ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.